guys, Matt, IronTrap Garage. We are working on the free tee again. So as we've been mentioning in the last handful of videos, I'm trying to just focus in and get all the last little things that need to be done for metalwork before we start with our body work and doing, of course, paint. So you saw in a video where we did the little filler panel on the side between the turtle deck and the frame to kind of blend that in. When we were stripping the paint, the original paint on the turtle deck, we found some pockets of filler that were a little concerning. So I mentioned as well that Andrew was going to pay his dues and strip the turtle deck, so that time has come. So today he's going to take the turtle deck off with me. We're going to put him up outside because I'm afraid of what is going to happen if there's a lot of filler. He's going to strip it down using a couple different methods, and then we'll see where we're at and try and decide what needs to be done. If anything, I'm hoping that it's just a little bit of hammer and dolly work and we don't need to do anything crazy, but you never know. So we'll get started on that and we'll check in once we get it stripped. All right, so Andrew got this thing stripped and it's a nightmare. It's the nightmare of all nightmares. This thing's been, and this little spot here is after me hammering on it. It was much worse. Somebody like took 3, 4, I don't know how many turtle decks and cut them apart and made one and just filled it with a mountain of filler. And there's some really bad work on this. So we're trying to decide, do we try and fix it? Do we mud it up with another inch of mud? Or do we just throw it in the trash can and get another turtle deck? I don't know. So I think what we're gonna do is try and cut this seam where they overlapped it and made a mess and try and get that like a butt weld it back together, and then we can fix a little bit of the warping in it. Same thing on this side, and we'll see how that goes. If not, it might be throwing this in the trash can or hanging it from the ceiling. I don't know yet, so we'll see what happens. Okay guys, so I want to give you a cool little tech tip. Some of you guys that watch the videos will often comment, oh, it'd be great if I had those tools, if I had the money to have a big English wheel or a TIG welder or this or that. Sometimes I like to just show free or cheap little things you can do as you're working on stuff that you don't need any money for. So what I have here is just a little 2x4 scrap that I keep laying around, and I have a radius hammer here. So what happened when they redid the sheet metal in this on this car, when they did the patch, the shape of the curve, basically from like halfway up to this corner, you saw we were heat shrinking earlier. There was like too much metal there, and they kind of beat the radius down in this area here and changed it, so it got really flat in this area, and it needs more of a sharp curve to it. So what I need to do is just kind of like move the metal around and put a little bit more of a crown in the panel right there. So instead of using a hammer on dolly technique where you're hitting really hard and you're stretching the metal, I want to just kind of like push the metal around and just kind of push it over and gather some metal right in here. So I don't necessarily want to do some crazy stretching where I'm going to be hitting really hard or working the planishing hammer real hard in that area. So what I could do is use a block of wood. The thing about a block of wood is you're using it like a dolly, but it's kind of soft. So it does have some give to it. So when I hammer on it with a radius hammer, it will give just a little bit to kind of like push the metal up and sort of stretch it. Similar to effect when you're hitting with on a sandbag and you're stretching the metal out, but not nearly as severe. So that way I can tap around in this little area here where I want the corner to be, using this as a dolly, and I'm not going to be stretching as much when I'm hammering hard on dolly with metal on metal. With the wood, it kind of deadens it a little bit. Another way to describe it is like when we talked about with a rubber band on the top wheel and an English wheel, you're kind of forming. Same kind of idea where this is going to give a little bit, and it will help us kind of bring this radius in where I need it. So if you keep these little blocks of wood around, you can use them for all sorts of stuff. You can sand them into shapes to define lines, or you can use them for a dolly like this when you're trying to just smooth something out. All right, so now you see the mess that is the Free T turtle deck. After Andrew stripped this thing, I was pretty bummed out, and I actually took a few days and just stepped away from this thing and worked on some other stuff on the tee. And I didn't really even film that stuff. I was just kind of working on some more door jam type stuff that I wanted to refine even a little more. And what I really wanted to film was the turtle deck, but I needed to step away for 2-3 days because I was really at a conflict of what I should do. I'm giving myself a deadline to try and get this thing ready for us to start doing body work. And because of that, I'm a little stressed on not delaying any of my friends that are gonna be helping me with the body work. But in the end, after I took a couple days of walking away, I realized what the right thing to do is just, even if it takes some long nights in between working on this and getting it in body work, I needed to cut it apart and do it right. At least repair it to an acceptable means. The way it was before was not okay. And if we would have filled it over, it probably would have looked okay, but over time it was probably gonna crack out or start shadowing, and you would be able to see all these really bad repairs, and it would definitely eat at me, and I know I'd end up redoing it. So at least this way, it's like 80%, and you guys saw in the last couple shots, I ran the Planishing hammer over it really, really fast, just to kind of get out of any of the craziness in the panel. There was like really crazy highs and lows and just spots where they were picking at it with the pick hammer, and I wanted to get all that stuff at least kind of smoothed out so it wasn't really crazy. I ran over it with some 80 grit just to knock it all down and level it out, and it's acceptable for now. I didn't go crazy getting the bullseye pick out and getting every little pit out on either side of the weld, because I would have another probably week into just this side of working on it in the evenings, and I need to keep moving on this thing. So I got this pretty good, showed you guys the process, how you could save a panel like this if you run into something on one of your own cars where you find somebody lap welded it. Sometimes you can save it by doing this, by running a fine cutoff wheel through the flange, peeling the underside flange off, and then butt welding the seam back up. If you're careful, you can save the panel. I had to be really careful on this panel, as you guys saw in some of the shots. I was welding, an inch at a time. I would sand the welds down top and bottom, hammer and dolly it, take care of the shrinking, and then move on and do another little inch and keep going that way. That was the best way that I could keep the panel under control, because there is so many crazy repairs in this thing. I think if I would have just welded it up in one shot, it probably would have twisted or worked really funny, and I would have been chasing my tail. I'm just not that confident or good that I could just weld the whole panel and be able to read everything really quickly and correct it. So with all the other stuff going on in the panel, it was easier for me to just correct it a little at a time. The panel came out pretty decent for how bad it was, and now I'm ready to move on to the other side. After I get that side welded up, then I'm going to go back on either side of the deck lid opening, do the same thing. I think those won't be too bad to do. It's just these really long seams that are very time consuming, because they're out in the middle where there's a lot of open area that could warp really bad if you don't take your time. So that is the reality of building old junk out of junk, or stuff that you don't think is junk and you dig into it and it is. So I like showing you guys this stuff. I think if any of you guys that have built these old cars, you probably could relate to this, because it's the reality of what happens, and you shouldn't just get discouraged and do it wrong. It's better to step back for a day or two, reflect on it, and in the end, most times, I know with myself, I end up choosing the correct thing and either redoing it or cutting it apart and doing it correct, or repairing it correctly so that it is a lasting repair. So that's pretty much it, guys. Hopefully you guys enjoy these style of videos of giving the updates on the Free T. As always, we do videos on Tuesdays, Fridays, and Sundays. If you haven't subscribed, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We're trying to keep up with 3 videos a week, and we really do appreciate everybody that joins along, comments, and everything like that. And the question of today's video for you guys is, what is your worst panel that you've found? You've seen probably one of the worst ones I've ever come across. What is the worst one you've found when you're redoing an old car? What did you find? I want to hear in the comments. Let me know. I'd like to read them all and hear what you guys have, so we can all kind of kumbaya together, and it'll be cool. Thanks, guys. Catch you later.